Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order at 5:30. Roll call, please.
Director Sailors. Director Gould is absent. Director Costa.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now is the public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the committee scope, including items on or not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
No one online.
Oh, all right. All right, the consent agenda. Do we have, everyone had an opportunity to review the consent agenda? All right, we have a motion and I'll second.
Perfect. Director Sailors
Aye.
and Director Costa.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So then we'll move to presentation items. And the first one is the revision of Administrative Policy 143-01, timekeeping and attendance policy. CFO Dave O'Toole.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Chair, Director Sailors, Fire Chief House, colleagues, and members of the public. Dave O'Toole, Chief Financial Officer. And for this item, I'll be presenting the updates to the timekeeping and attendance policy, which was last amended in 2010. The purpose of this policy is to define how employees in both day and shift positions are report and track their time worked. The policy changes before you today are intended to reflect the current timekeeping practices, mainly since we adopted an Oracle system, and that's currently what's in use today. The policy also clarifies that shift staff will use the telestaff system to report time. Additionally, the timekeeping and attendance policy confirms that shift employees' work schedules are determined by the most recent memorandum of understanding and their staffing manual. Also, it specifies that the responsibilities of employees and supervisors to report time and that it's reported accurately and the timing associated with those reports. There's no fiscal impact with this policy, and this is an administrative policy, so my recommendation is to review and approve the timekeeping and attendance policy.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions? No questions? All right, thank you very much. Then with the next, you have the next one as well.
Yes, he does.
All right. So revisions of board policy 01.013-01, travel and conference policy.
Thank you again. I will be presenting this travel and conference expense policy, which guides the district and board on acceptable uses of district funds when traveling and attending conferences. This policy was last amended in 2016, and the changes of the policy mainly have to do with meal payments and reimbursements. The proposed change would limit the use of the district credit card when purchasing meals when traveling at conferences. If adopted, travelers would no longer need to retain and submit their receipts. So we'd be doing away with that portion, but they would instead receive per diem payments in accordance with what the General Services Administration, Federal General Services Administration allows after they return from their travel. This practice is how other localities, not every, but several that we looked into use it. So we're not pioneering in that regard. As long as there's valid documentation, it suffices for the county as well. We have checked with the county about this change and they've said it's satisfactory with them as well. It's also been reviewed by HR, by executive staff, by Council Lavera as well, and before going forward to you. There's no fiscal impact associated with this policy, and my recommendation, because it is a board policy, my recommendation is to review it and if approved, if acceptable, to move it forward to the board for discussion and approval. That concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Any questions? So just so I'm clear, why are we making the change?
It was largely staff driven, I would say, as a CFO. I think it's a convenience and it's acceptable convenience to not have to retain those receipts for meals. The finance staff and staff who travel. It is a burden, and sometimes receipts get lost for meals, and that is by far the receipt that's maintained the most. You still need receipts for for Ubers or parking. It's not doing away with that. It only applies to the meal piece.
The meal piece?
Yeah, and that's the only thing the GSA will allow.
Okay, and I wasn't sure, but I didn't see it in there, but anything about gratuity? Is there any requirements that we stay within a particular
It-
percentage?
There is in the policy, I think it's 15%, but that wasn't changed.
Okay.
With this.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And Director Costa, if I can.
Yes.
This also cuts down staff time that's not needed for current use of per diem that's approved by not only the feds, but the state. This takes us into moving forward as a large organization. And it's really cumbersome, quite frankly, to save all the receipts when we're on travel and conference, but it really comes back and impacts staff tremendously to gather all that information. So
Yes.
thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Chief. All right. So then we need to take action, move this forward to the board. There-
Able to move forward to
Okay.
the board.
Any concerns with that? Questions? No. All right. So let's move that forward to the board. Thank you. All right, we have one more presentation. So it is the year-end review of completed policy in 2023, and then what's coming in 2024. HR Manager Melissa Maddox. Hello.
Good evening, directors, Chief House. First, I just want to start off by saying thank you, Director Costa, for meeting with Leslie and I about a month ago now, I think. For taking your time to meet with us and go over some direction and provide some assistance to us. I know you have a lot of expertise when it comes to policies, so we were really happy to meet with you and kind of get an idea of what the policy committee would expect going forward, so.
Yeah, thank you for your time and putting all this together.
Second, I want to say I can't take credit for all the policy revisions. Our HR analyst, Leslie Miller, is definitely the pioneer of our policy review process, as well as all the board policies and the administrative policies that she makes sure are in all the proper formats and that I am bringing to you month to month. She also works with all the division managers that aren't necessarily policies that you guys see. They're divisional specific, maybe operational policies, procedures, that kind of thing, where she's not necessarily the subject matter expert, but she will work with the managers from different divisions to revise policies throughout the year. So I just wanted to give the credit where the credit was due with her, so. I'm going to start off just providing a little bit of history. I know we kind of went over this with Director Costa when we met with him, but the history for the policy review process is sort of old. It does go back to the board in 2011, where the board provided direction on what was a board policy and what was an administrative policy. So administrative policies come to the policy committee for review, recommendations, assistance on, making the policy better or the proper direction. And then, board policies come to the policy committee first. You approve them and then they get moved to the board, just as we saw with CFO O'Toole's policy that he just presented. So that was where that direction had kind of started. At the time, the Deputy Chief of Admin had provided a list of all of the policies, and the board went through those policies and said, okay, here's the ones that we want to be board policies. Here are the ones that we want to be admin policies. And at that same time, job descriptions were considered a board policy. They had agreed to say, okay, we're going to take job descriptions completely out of board or admin. And the purpose of that was because of job duties constantly changing and the need to constantly change job descriptions, which is really important for them to be accurate at all times. They said, okay, fine, here, let's use this particular template. Let's make it consistent. And then we don't want to see job descriptions anymore, which helped HR to move faster when to get a recruitment out, because we didn't have to wait for the next board policy meeting or, things to get the job description changed, which could prevent us, postpone us from posting the job announcement. So that really helped. And, with job descriptions and some of our policies obviously require 522 review. So that helped with that because we didn't have to wait for, 522 to review and then the board and back and forth. So that was where that came from. So, of course, all of this is subject to change. I want to make that absolutely clear. That was just the direction that was given back in 2011. And therefore, it's still your direction now here in 2023, almost 2024. So just a little history on how that all came about. The big question of the day that I've always asked is what constitutes a board policy and what would constitute an administrative policy? It's kind of a gray area. There's no definitive legal answer. And I did discuss this with General Counsel Lavra. And if you remember the Brown Act training that Chief Haverty put on, I think it was the beginning of the year, I had also asked that question and they were attorneys there as well. And I still felt like it was a gray answer. So there is no definitive answer, but I'll just read to you what Counsel Lavra provided to me, and in quotes. His definition of the difference between the two is a board policy is a larger, I should wear my glasses, sorry. A board policy is a larger policy statement on certain subjects that cover all employees on matters over which the board wants to set the basic rules. Basically a policy that they do not want to leave the discretion to management. An administrative policy is a policy that controls the specifics of a day-to-day operation, which the board normally would not want control over and which they want to leave the discretion with management. So for an example, a board policy would be all employees that work more than 40 hours a week are entitled to overtime versus a admin policy would be all overtime is subject to pre-approval from a supervisor. It needs to be pre-approved on a particular form. It needs to be done 2 days ahead of time, whatever, you know, those guidelines are. That would be more of an administrative policy. So that's my best way to explain the difference between those two. So that's pretty much the history. That's how we got here. Like I said earlier, you have full discretion to change that. And we're willing to sit down like we did with Director Costa and kind of go over it. Like I said, Leslie does a great job at keeping everything very consistent and orderly, and she doesn't let anything get past her. It's got to be in the particular format. She's a wonderful proofreader. So like I said, we can definitely work on this going forward in 2024 and you know, follow whatever direction you feel is necessary to keep this process, keep the process improving. So.
Sorry, really quick before you jump into the
Yes.
presentation, do you have any questions?
Yeah.
This, just the explanation has been wonderful. I think it really sets the stage for the next part of this, which thank you for pulling all of this together. And nothing prevents the committee from taking any item forward to the board, right, for a review if we think it's necessary. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yep. Technically, all policies could be board policies if you want them to be. But we do have a lot of policies. So
Right.
that's up to you. Just for numbers wise, currently we have 37 board policies, 119 administrative policies, and then also 70 additional job descriptions. And that doesn't include all the general policies, the divisional specific policies. So we have quite a bit. And all these policies are available on the app, on the intranet, under policies. And Leslie is the one that manages that app as well and makes sure that the policies are always updated as they're approved, removes the old one. It's not perfect. It can always be improved. So, you know, we're always open to feedback and direction. Absolutely. So the presentation I have is pretty quick. It's just kind of an overview of what we have accomplished this year and then what we're looking forward to in 2024 as far as policy revisions. So for the year of 2023, we've completed 32 policy revisions, which include 13 administrative, 3 board policies, 3 general policies, 3 operations policies, 7 peace officer policies, and 3 support services policies. Of those administrative policies that I just mentioned included a password policy, the policy development and implementation policy, which is the policy that I like to call the policy on policies. There's the reinstatement policy. We also had the revision to the reinstatement and rehire policy, the financial planning and budget policy, and then 8 job descriptions. As far as the board policies goes, that we did this year, include the FMLA policy, purchasing contracting policy, and meal and refreshment policy. The FMLA policy, which is the family medical leave policy, which also includes the California Family Rights Act. That one you're probably gonna see at least once a year, maybe multiple times a year, just because the laws change and the laws are getting ready to change again on January 1st. So that's an ever-changing policy. So you'll see that one over and over and over again. And it's one of our most used policies as far as leaves of absence, and it's has a lot of legal requirements, and we want to make sure and it can be confusing because there's a lot of contradicting laws between federal and state, qualifying family members, qualifying conditions, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a spider web there a little bit, but. So that was for last year. Any questions on the policies that we've done for 2023?
Thank you.
So the policies for next year that actually are technically currently already in process. We have 21 of them. And this list will obviously grow as we go on through the year. There's already a couple that aren't on here that I'm thinking that we're gonna need that are coming up through other divisions. So 6 administrative, 10 board, 1 general, 2 operations, 1 peace officer, and 1 support services. For the administrative policies that would come to you as the policy committee would include the sick leave policy, our donated leave policies for represented and unrepresented, the 56-hour alternative position policy, timekeeping policy, and some job descriptions as we go through recruitments and that kind of thing. Some of these policies may not be right off the bat. I should explain that part is, for instance, the donated leave policies, those are just some edits due to changes, say, in other policies. So if something changes in the FMLA policy, it might affect something in the donated leave policy. So we try to follow the trail down and make sure we're revising. Other things like the sick leave policy, that will require a little bit more input from 522, meet and confer. It has to go through the proper, approval process before it even comes to you. So those tend to take a little bit longer. For board policies that will come to you first for approval and move forward a full board include, again, the FMLA policy. We're sure that one's going to come back. Drug and alcohol policy and procedures, our equal employment opportunity policy, workplace harassment, workplace violence, non-discrimination, non-retaliation, purchasing and contracting policy, standards of coverage policy, and travel and conference policy. And the middle ones, the workplace harassment, workplace violence, non-discrimination, again, those are ones that are constantly going to be updated. And a lot of times it's because there's changes in other policies that affect these. And so there's always that trickle down where we need to make sure all the policies are in line and they're all matching. It doesn't mean it's really, really old or we have a problem with it. It just is truly edits that are happening simultaneously.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And that is all I have for tonight, unless you have any other questions, or if you want to provide any direction on the next policy committee of something you would like to see in addition.
Any questions?
No, I just would like to make a comment. Thank you very much for that in-depth presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for taking the time. I think it does a couple different things. One, it showcases the work you've been doing. And sometimes we get through the year and, it's good to look back and see all the work that you've accomplished, you and the team. So thank you very much. And it also helps kind of forecast what to expect. So I think for this committee to understand what may be coming forward and ultimately what will be going to the board and trying to balance those agendas as we move forward. So thank you for pulling all of this together. I do think there's an opportunity. Last month, there were some board questions around some policies. And so I do think there's an opportunity to bring this to the full board to present to them, especially the beginning part about in, 2011, the decisions that were made. Because that was some time ago, and I think it's an opportunity for the full board to provide some feedback.
Absolutely.
works for
We
you.
can do that in January.
That'd be great.
I don't know what the date is on that one, but January. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
Oh, okay. Great.
absolutely.
But that'd be fantastic. And I think the board would really benefit from that. So thank
Okay,
you.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much.
All right. So then our next meeting is February 8th. And so that adjourns the meeting. Thank you.